My name is Paige, 32 years old, standing in the marble lobby of the Ocean View Luxury Resort in Monterey, California, watching my mother's face turn crimson as she loudly complained to the front desk manager about my presence. My father stood beside her, nodding in agreement, demanding I be removed from the guest areas immediately. They had no idea their disappointment of a daughter, the one they'd written off as a failure, actually owned this $25 million paradise they were standing in. Before I continue this story, I'd love to know where you're watching from today. Please hit that like button and subscribe to hear how my parents demanded to speak to the owner about removing me from my own resort and what happened when I finally introduced myself properly. The November morning fog was just lifting off the Monterey coastline as I watched my family's rental car wind up the private road toward Ocean View Luxury Resort. 5 years ago, I would have been serving them coffee as a waitress at a roadside diner. Today, I owned one of California's most exclusive coastal properties, though my family still believed I was barely scraping by as some sort of event coordinator here. The resort sprawled across 15 acres of prime clifftop real estate, its 50 ultra-luxury suites, each offering panoramic views of the Pacific Ocean. I had personally overseen the renovation of every square foot, from the infinity pools that seemed to spill into the ocean to the world-class spa that attracted celebrities seeking absolute privacy. Our Michelin-starred restaurant had a 6-month waiting list, and the private golf course had hosted PGA champions. This was my kingdom built from heartbreak and determination, though my family knew nothing about it. My mother, Barbara, was 58, a retired elementary school teacher who still dressed like she was heading to a parent-teacher conference. She had spent 30 years molding young minds and had never stopped trying to mold her 3 adult children into her vision of success. She measured worth in traditional milestones like medical degrees, law licenses, and suburban mortgages with white picket fences. Everything I had chosen fell outside her narrow definition of achievement. My father, Thomas, 60 years old and recently retired from his accounting firm, lived his life by spreadsheets and conservative investments. He believed in mutual funds, government bonds, and keeping your money in savings accounts that barely beat inflation. The idea of risk made him physically uncomfortable, and he had passed that fear on to my siblings while somehow missing me entirely. He still told people his biggest concern was that I had no retirement plan, unaware that I could retire tomorrow and live comfortably for 3 lifetimes. Christopher, my older brother at 35, was everything my parents had dreamed of in a child. He had graduated from Johns Hopkins Medical School, completed his residency at Mass General, and now ran a successful cardiology practice in Boston. He drove a BMW that he leased because it projected the right image, lived in a colonial house that looked exactly like every other house on his street, and had married Madison, a dentist who spent most of her time planning charity galas she did not actually care about. They were the golden couple, the standard against which I was constantly measured and found wanting. Madison herself was a piece of work, the kind of woman who air-kissed instead of hugging, and constantly name-dropped people you had never heard of, but were apparently very important. She had joined our family 5 years ago and immediately established herself as Barbara's favorite, bonding over their shared love of criticizing my life choices. She specialized in backhanded compliments and concerned expressions that barely masked her delight in my perceived failures. Sophie, my younger sister at 28, had recently graduated from law school and joined a prestigious firm in Manhattan. She had just closed on a townhouse in Brooklyn that cost more than most people made in a decade, funded largely by her signing bonus, and what I suspected was help from our parents, though they would never admit to having favorites. Sophie had always been the baby protected and coddled, following the safe path laid out by our parents and brother. The reason they were all here converging on my resort this November weekend was my parents' 35th wedding anniversary. Christopher had made the booking, proudly announcing at a family dinner I had not been invited to that he had secured a reservation at the exclusive Ocean View Resort. He had bragged about the connections required to get a room here, not knowing that I had specifically instructed my staff to accept the reservation when it came through. None of them knew I owned this place. The purchase was made through an LLC I had created, and all public records listed the company name rather than mine personally. When asked about my work, I kept things vague, letting them believe I was some sort of event coordinator or hospitality worker here. They had never pressed for details, seemingly satisfied with their assumption that I was barely keeping my head above water in a dead-end service job. 5 years ago, their assumptions would have been correct. I was working as a waitress at a diner in Carmel serving eggs and coffee to tourists and locals alike. That was where I met Marcus Sterling, a 73-year-old hospitality mogul who came in every morning for black coffee and wheat toast. While other servers avoided him because he was particular and did not tip well, I enjoyed our conversations about the hotel industry, his travels, and his philosophy on service. Marcus had built an empire of boutique hotels before selling everything and retiring to Monterey. He was widowed, childless, and incredibly lonely despite his millions. Over the course of a year, our morning conversations evolved into a genuine friendship. He became my mentor, teaching me about property management, guest psychology, and the delicate balance required to create true luxury experiences. When Marcus was diagnosed with terminal cancer, he asked me to help manage his final arrangements. I spent his last 3 months by his side, not because I expected anything, but because he had become like the grandfather I never had. His passing hit me harder than I expected, but the reading of his will hit even harder. He had left me $10 million and a letter explaining that I was the daughter he wished he had been blessed with. My family never knew about Marcus or the inheritance. When I suddenly quit my waitressing job and mentioned I was looking at business opportunities, they assumed I was having another one of what Mother called my episodes of unrealistic ambition. They did not notice when I stopped asking them for advice or when I stopped attending family dinners where my life was the main topic of disappointed discussion. The Ocean View Resort had been hemorrhaging money when I found it. The previous owners had over-leveraged themselves. The property was outdated, and occupancy rates were below 30%. Everyone thought I was crazy to buy it, except for the vision I could see so clearly. I spent 2 years and every penny of Marcus's money on the renovation, living in a studio apartment and eating ramen while contractors transformed my dream into reality. The reopening 3 years ago had been covered by every major travel publication. We were featured in Architectural Digest Travel, Plus Leisure, and Condé Nast Traveler. Celebrities began booking suites, politicians held private meetings in our conference rooms, and tech executives chose us for their most important celebrations. The resort was now valued at $25 million, and I had offers from hotel chains wanting to buy me out weekly. But my family knew none of this. They still called occasionally to offer unsolicited advice about finding a real job, settling down with a nice man, and thinking about my future. Mother sent me job listings for receptionist positions, and Christopher once offered to get me an interview at his hospital for a filing clerk role. They meant well in their condescending way, but their inability to see me as anything other than their failure of a daughter had long since stopped hurting. Now, as I watched their car pull into our valet area, I straightened my custom-tailored suit and prepared for the performance of my life. James, my general manager, approached with a knowing look. He was one of the few people who knew the full story of my family dynamics. "Should I alert the staff about the situation?" he asked quietly. I shook my head, a small smile playing on my lips. "Let's see how this plays out naturally, but make sure security knows not to actually escort me anywhere if asked." The valet opened their car doors, and I watched my family emerge, Christopher helping Mother out with exaggerated chivalry, while Madison checked her reflection in the car window. Sophie was on her phone, probably posting about her exclusive weekend getaway, while Father struggled with the luggage until a bellhop quickly intervened. They entered the lobby, and I saw Mother's eyes widen at the soaring ceilings, the original artwork on the walls, and the panoramic ocean views through the floor-to-ceiling windows. This was the moment she spotted me standing near the concierge desk, reviewing some paperwork with my events manager. Her expression immediately shifted from wonder to disapproval. She grabbed Father's arm and whispered something that made him frown in my direction. Christopher noticed me next, his face cycling through surprise, embarrassment, and annoyance. Madison pulled out her phone, probably texting someone about the awkward situation of encountering Christopher's failure of a sister at their luxury weekend. Sophie was the last to notice me, and her reaction was the most telling. She actually tried to pretend she had not seen me turning away, and suddenly becoming very interested in a piece of sculpture that she definitely did not understand. I continued my conversation with my events manager, making notes about the senator's daughter's wedding next month, the Fortune 500 CEO retreat in December, and the celebrity chef's cookbook launch we were hosting. Every detail required my approval, from the specific thread count of the linens to the selection of wines for each event. But to my family watching from across the lobby, I probably looked like an eager employee trying too hard to appear important. The check-in process was already off to a rocky start when Barbara's voice cut through the elegant lobby's ambient quiet like a rusty chainsaw through silk. She had marched directly to the front desk, bypassing the queue of other guests, her teacher voice demanding immediate attention from my carefully trained staff. "Excuse me," she said to Alexandra, my front desk manager, while gesturing toward me with barely concealed irritation. "Why is that woman dressed like that and wandering around your lobby like she owns the place? Isn't there a dress code for staff? She looks completely unprofessional." I was wearing a $3,000 Saint Laurent suit that had been custom-tailored in San Francisco, paired with Louboutin heels and subtle diamond jewelry. But to my mother, anything that was not a cardigan and sensible shoes was either trying too hard or not trying enough, depending on her mood. Alexandra, who had been briefed on the situation, maintained her professional composure beautifully. "Good morning, Mrs. Harrison. Welcome to Ocean View Luxury Resort. How may I assist you with your check-in today?" But Barbara was not to be deterred. "I asked you a question about that employee. She keeps walking around interfering with the ambiance of this establishment. My son paid good money for this reservation, and we expect a certain level of exclusivity." Christopher stepped forward, his doctor's ego fully inflated. "My mother is right. This is supposed to be a 5-star resort. Having staff members lounging around the guest areas is unprofessional. Paige, shouldn't you be in the kitchen or wherever it is you work?" The way he said my name, dripping with second-hand embarrassment, made several of my employees exchange glances. The bellhop who had taken their luggage was fighting to keep his expression neutral, knowing his boss was being insulted by her own family. "Good morning, Christopher," I said pleasantly, walking over with the calm confidence that came from knowing every inch of this property belonged to me. "Welcome to Ocean View. I hope you all have a wonderful stay." Madison looked me up and down with the kind of assessment she usually reserved for auction items at her charity events. "That's quite an expensive outfit for someone in your position. Are you sure you can afford it? Credit card debt is a serious problem in this country." Before I could respond, Sophie joined the pile on. "Honestly, Paige, this is embarrassing. I have colleagues coming for dinner tonight, including a senior partner from my firm. Can you please just stay in the employee areas? It's inappropriate for you to be mixing your personal life with your work environment." Thomas finally spoke up, his accountant's mind calculating something. "How much does an event coordinator even make at a place like this? Surely not enough to be shopping on Rodeo Drive. I hope you're not living beyond your means again." Again. He was referring to a time 10 years ago when I had maxed out a credit card trying to start a small business that failed. They never let me forget it, bringing it up at every opportunity as evidence of my poor judgment. "I'm quite comfortable, thank you," I replied, maintaining my pleasant smile while mentally reviewing their reservation details. They had booked the Ocean Suite, our third-best accommodation, because the 2 premium suites were occupied by a senator and a tech billionaire, respectively. Christopher had probably stretched his budget to afford even this. Barbara turned back to Alexandra, her voice rising slightly. "I want to speak to a manager about this situation. This employee is clearly overstepping boundaries, and it's making us uncomfortable." James materialized beside Alexandra as if summoned by the complaint itself. His British accent and impeccable presentation immediately commanded respect. "Good morning. I'm James Worthington, the general manager. How may I assist you today?" Barbara's entire demeanor shifted when faced with someone she perceived as authority. "Yes, Mr. Worthington, we have a situation here. This woman," she gestured at me dismissively, "is creating an uncomfortable environment for your paying guests. She seems to have boundary issues using her position here to intrude on our family time." James's expression remained professionally neutral, though I could see the slight twitch at the corner of his mouth that indicated he was fighting back either laughter or indignation. "I see. And what specifically has Ms. Harrison done to cause discomfort?" Christopher jumped in his voice, taking on the authoritative tone he used with nurses. She's hovering around the guest areas dressed inappropriately for her station and making our anniversary celebration awkward. We're paying customers, and we deserve to enjoy our stay without staff members who can't maintain professional boundaries. I understand your concern, James replied diplomatically. However, I should clarify that Ms. Harrison has full access to all areas of the resort. Madison laughed, a tinkling sound that grated on everyone's nerves. Full access. What is she the owner? She meant it as a joke, the idea so preposterous to her that several staff members had to turn away to hide their expressions. Barbara was building steam now, her teacher voice reaching the pitch she once used to quiet cafeterias full of children. I don't care what access she supposedly has. This is our anniversary weekend, a special occasion that my son spent considerable money to arrange. The least you can do is ensure that your staff maintains appropriate boundaries. Several other guests were now watching the scene unfold. Senator Williams, who had been a regular since our reopening, caught my eye from across the lobby. He started to approach, probably to greet me, but I subtly shook my head. This was my family's show, and I was curious to see how far they would take it. Sophie, never one to miss an opportunity to assert her newly minted lawyer status, added her threat to the mix. If this situation isn't resolved, we'll have no choice but to leave negative reviews on every platform. I have over 3,000 followers on Instagram, and they trust my recommendations. 3,000 followers. Our resort's Instagram had 200,000, but I kept that information to myself. Furthermore, Thomas added, his accountant's mind working, we'll be expecting a partial refund for this inconvenience. It's basic customer service. James looked at me, and I could see he was struggling between his duty to protect me and his training to never contradict a guest. I gave him the slightest nod permission to play along with their demands. I assure you we take all guest concerns seriously, James said carefully. Perhaps we could discuss this further after you've had a chance to settle into your suite. But Barbara was not interested in delays. No, I want this resolved now. That woman needs to be restricted to employee-only areas for the duration of our stay. The irony of the situation was not lost on me. Here was my mother in my resort demanding that I be banished from my own property. The same woman who had spent years telling me I would never amount to anything was now inadvertently proving just how wrong she had been, though she did not know it yet. Mom, I said calmly, I'm just doing my job. This is what I do here. Your job. Barbara's voice dripped with disdain. Your job is to stay out of sight and not embarrass your family. My God, Paige, you're 32 years old. When are you going to grow up and get a real career instead of playing hostess at someone else's business? Playing hostess at someone else's business. If she only knew that this business generated $8 million in revenue last year, employed 200 people, and had been featured in documentaries about American entrepreneurship. Christopher pulled out his phone, his face red with embarrassment. I'm texting my colleague at the medical board. His wife is a travel blogger with real influence. This place will regret not taking our concerns seriously. Madison was already typing on her own phone. I'm posting about this right now. My followers need to know what kind of establishment allows their staff to harass guests. The scene was escalating beautifully, each family member adding their own special brand of entitlement to the mix. Other guests were discreetly recording on their phones, probably wondering what kind of horrible thing this employee had done to warrant such a reaction. If they only knew the employee in question owned every square inch of the marble they were standing on. Perhaps, James suggested, his diplomatic skills being tested to their limits, we could offer you a complimentary upgrade to help make your stay more comfortable. This was not part of any plan, and I raised an eyebrow at him. He was trying to defuse the situation, but I was not ready for that yet. An upgrade won't solve the problem of that woman. Barbara pointed at me again, stalking our family around this resort. Stalking. I was being accused of stalking my own family in my own resort. The absurdity of it should have made me angry, but instead, I felt a strange sense of calm. This was exactly who they had always been, and having money and success had not changed my family dynamics one bit. They still saw me as the embarrassing failure who needed to be hidden away. You know what? Sophie said, suddenly her lawyer instincts kicking in. I want to see the employee handbook. I want to know exactly what the policies are regarding staff interaction with guests. This feels like harassment." Several of my employees were now watching with barely concealed amazement. My head of housekeeping, Maria, who had worked here for 20 years and been promoted to her position when I took over, looked ready to intervene. My executive chef, Antoine, had emerged from the kitchen and was standing in the doorway with his arms crossed. Even my security chief, Mike, was hovering nearby, unsure whether to laugh or be concerned. This was the moment when things could have gone either way. I could have revealed myself then, ended their embarrassment before it went any further. But years of being dismissed, belittled, and ignored had built up a reservoir of patience for this exact moment. They wanted to speak to the owner. They were going to get their wish, just not quite yet. The dinner reservation that evening was set for 7:30 at our signature restaurant, Coastal Dreams, which had been fully booked for 3 months, except for the table I had specifically held for my family. They had no idea that their ability to get a reservation at all was due to my direct intervention, instead attributing it to Christopher's supposed connections and influence. I watched from my office's security monitors as they entered the restaurant, Mother wearing what she considered her fancy outfit, a department store dress that she had probably owned for a decade. Christopher and Madison coordinated in matching navy, the uniform of the aspirationally wealthy. Sophie wore a designer dress that I recognized from last season's collection, probably purchased at a discount outlet, but still trying to project success. Father looked uncomfortable in his suit, pulling at his collar the way he always did when forced into formal wear. Antoine had prepared a special tasting menu just for their table, though they did not know it. Each course was specifically designed around their preferences, information I had gathered from years of family dinners. Christopher's shellfish allergy was accommodated, Madison's pretentious love of French cuisine indulged, Sophie's vegetarian tendencies respected, and my parents' conservative palates carefully considered. I made my entrance during their second course, walking through the dining room to check on various tables as I did every evening. This was part of my routine, ensuring that every guest's experience exceeded expectations. Senator Williams raised his wine glass to me as I passed. The tech CEO at Table 12 wanted to thank me personally for accommodating his daughter's wedding next month. The celebrity chef in the corner was excited to discuss his upcoming cookbook launch event. But when I approached my family's table, Barbara's face immediately soured. "This is absolutely unacceptable," she said loudly enough for neighboring tables to hear. "We cannot even enjoy our meal without being stalked by this employee." Our restaurant manager, Alexander, appeared immediately. He was one of my first hires, poached from a Michelin 3-star restaurant in New York. "Is everything prepared to your satisfaction this evening?" he asked with professional concern. Christopher seized the opportunity. "No, actually it's not. This woman," he gestured at me dismissively, "keeps appearing wherever we are. It's harassment at this point. We're trying to celebrate our parents' anniversary and she's making it about herself." Madison added her voice to the chorus. In any other establishment, an employee behaving this way would be terminated immediately. "What kind of operation are you running here?" Alexander, who knew exactly what kind of operation we were running and who was actually running it, maintained his composure admirably. "I apologize for any discomfort. Would you like me to arrange for a private dining space?" "What I'd like," Barbara said, her voice reaching the pitch that used to make me cringe as a child, "is for this woman to be removed from the premises. She's clearly using her minor position here to intrude on our family time." Minor position. I wondered what she would think if she knew that my minor position included signing Alexander's 6-figure salary checks. Sophie, ever the lawyer, pulled out her phone and started recording. "I'm documenting this for our legal records. This is a clear case of harassment and hostile environment. The resort could be liable for allowing this behavior to continue." The other diners were watching now, the kind of discreet observation that wealthy people perfected. They were curious about what could cause such a scene in an establishment known for its impeccable service. Several were people I knew personally who had attended my private events and charity fundraisers. They looked confused, trying to reconcile the woman they knew as the owner with the family treating her like a problematic waitress. "Perhaps," I said calmly, "I should give you some space to enjoy your meal." "Perhaps you should find another job," Mother snapped. "One where you don't have access to paying guests. Really, Paige, at your age, this is just pathetic." Thomas finally contributed his opinion. Your mother's right. This whole situation is embarrassing. We're trying to have a nice family dinner, and you're making it all about you as usual. As usual. Because clearly I was the one making a scene in the middle of a 5-star restaurant. Alexander looked at me questioningly, and I gave him a subtle signal to continue normal service. He nodded and professionally excused himself, though I could see the strain of maintaining his composure. The rest of their dinner proceeded without my presence, though I continued to monitor from my office. They complained about my harassment to 3 different staff members, each of whom had to pretend they did not report directly to the woman being complained about. By dessert, they had worked themselves into such a state of indignation that Christopher was drafting a formal complaint email on his phone. After dinner, they moved to our lounge for drinks. This was where things escalated further. I was conducting my evening rounds, checking with the bartenders about inventory and discussing tomorrow's special events with my team. The moment I entered the lounge, Barbara stood up dramatically. "That's it. This is intentional. She's following us." Several guests turned to stare. A famous actress I knew well looked particularly confused, having just been about to approach me to discuss hosting her birthday party at the resort. Madison jumped up as well. "This is stalking. We need security." The word security triggered our protocol, and Mike, my security chief, approached professionally. He was a former Navy SEAL who could probably bench press Christopher and Thomas combined, but he maintained a calm, non-threatening demeanor. "Good evening, folks. What seems to be the issue?" Mike asked, though he knew exactly what was happening. Christopher puffed up his chest. "This employee has been harassing our family all day. We want her removed from the property immediately." Mike looked at me, and I could see he was fighting back a smile. "Ma'am, I'm going to need you to come with me," he said to me formally. I nodded cooperatively. "Of course." As Mike escorted me away, I heard Barbara say to the gathered crowd, "Some people just don't know their place. It's really quite sad." Mike walked me around the corner out of sight and finally let out the laugh he had been holding. "Boss, your family is something else." "They don't know the half of it," I replied. "Make sure all staff know to continue treating them with utmost professionalism. Tomorrow morning is when things get interesting." The rest of the evening, my family held court in the lounge, telling anyone who would listen about the disturbed employee who had been stalking them. They even showed Sophie's video to other guests, not realizing that several of those guests were texting me directly to ask what was going on. Senator Williams sent me a message. "Paige, is that really your family treating you that way in your own resort?" The celebrity chef was more direct. "Want me to poison their breakfast?" I responded to all with the same message. "Tomorrow morning, pool area. You won't want to miss it." By the time my family retired to their ocean suite, they had told their story to at least a dozen guests and staff members. They had demanded compensation, threatened legal action, and promised devastating reviews. Christopher had even called a friend who supposedly knew someone at the Department of Health, threatening to have our licenses reviewed. As I stood in my penthouse apartment on the top floor of the resort, looking out at the moonlight reflecting off the Pacific, I thought about Marcus Sterling. He had once told me that success was not about proving others wrong, but about proving yourself right. Tomorrow, I would do both. My phone buzzed with a text from James. "Staff fully briefed for tomorrow. Everyone's looking forward to the reveal." I smiled, thinking about my mother's words earlier. Some people just don't know their place. Tomorrow she would learn that I knew my place perfectly well. I was exactly where I belonged in the resort I had built from nothing, surrounded by the empire I had created, while they were busy telling me I would never amount to anything. The next morning arrived with perfect California sunshine, the kind of crystalline day that made our $30,000 per night penthouse suite guests feel they had gotten their money's worth. I was up at 5:30 as always, starting with my morning run along the private beach, then reviewing the overnight reports from my night manager. By 8 o'clock, I was positioned strategically in the pool area, conducting a routine inspection with my maintenance supervisor. The infinity pools sparkled in the morning light, the ocean beyond creating a seamless blue horizon. This was where our highest-paying guests typically spent their mornings, and I made sure every detail was perfect. My family emerged around 9, Christopher loudly announcing their arrival by immediately complaining about the temperature of the air conditioning in their suite. They had dressed for poolside leisure, though their department store swimwear looked distinctly out of place among the designer resort wear of our typical clientele. The moment Barbara spotted me, her face turned the particular shade of red I remembered from childhood tantrums. "This is absolutely unbelievable. She's here again." I was examining the pool's filtration system with my maintenance supervisor, a legitimate part of my morning routine, but to my family it was another act of stalking. "Security!" Barbara shouted loud enough to echo off the cliff walls. "Security, remove this woman immediately!" Mike appeared within seconds as planned. Several guests looked up from their morning coffee and newspapers, including a federal judge I knew well and a Fortune 500 CEO who had become a close friend. "Ma'am, what seems to be the problem?" Mike asked Barbara formally. "This employee," she pointed at me with a shaking finger, "has been harassing us since we arrived. She's everywhere we go. It's disturbing and illegal. I want her arrested for stalking." Sophie pulled out her phone again, recording everything. "I'm getting this on video for the lawsuit. This is clear harassment, and the resort is liable for not protecting its guests." Madison was also recording, narrating for her Instagram followers. "You guys, this is insane. We're being stalked by this crazy employee at what's supposed to be a luxury resort. She literally follows us everywhere." Christopher approached Mike with his doctor authority voice. "I'm Dr. Christopher Harrison from Boston. This woman is my sister, and she's clearly having some sort of mental breakdown, using her position here to harass our family. She needs to be removed and probably psychologically evaluated." Mike maintained his professional composure, though I could see the muscle in his jaw twitching. "I understand your concerns. Let me call management to address this situation." "I don't want management," Thomas said, finally losing his accountant's calm. "I want the owner, the actual owner. This has gone too far. We've been patient, but this woman needs to be fired, and we deserve compensation for this harassment." Barbara nodded vigorously. "Yes, get the owner down here right now. They need to know what kind of people they're employing. This is a disgrace to the hospitality industry." More guests were gathering, drawn by the commotion. The federal judge had actually pulled out his phone to record, sensing something interesting was about to happen. The celebrity chef from last night emerged from the restaurant, coffee in hand, positioning himself for a good view. "I demand to speak to the owner immediately," Barbara repeated, her voice reaching peak intensity. "This employee should be fired on the spot. We're paying customers who deserve respect and safety." I set down my maintenance clipboard and walked calmly toward my family. Mike stepped aside, and James appeared as if by magic, flanked by Alexandra and Alexander. "You want to speak to the owner?" I asked calmly. "Yes," Barbara practically screamed. "Get them here now. You're going to be fired, and we're going to sue this place for everything it's worth." Sophie added, "I have everything documented: the harassment, the stalking, the hostile environment. My firm specializes in litigation like this." I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out my business card, the one with the gold embossing that read, "Paige Harrison, owner and CEO, Ocean View Luxury Resort." "You wanted to speak to the owner?" I said, handing my mother the card. "You're speaking to her. I own this resort, every square inch of it." The silence that followed was absolute. Barbara's face went from red to white so quickly I was momentarily concerned about her blood pressure. The card fluttered from her numb fingers, landing on the pristine pool deck. Christopher laughed nervously. "That's not funny, Paige. Impersonating ownership is probably illegal. You could go to jail for this." "She's not impersonating anyone," James said, formally stepping forward. "May I present Ms. Paige Harrison, owner and CEO of Ocean View Luxury Resort. She purchased this property 3 years ago and has built it into one of the most exclusive destinations on the West Coast." Barbara's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. Thomas stumbled backward, catching himself on a lounge chair. Sophie dropped her phone, the device clattering on the stone and skittering toward the pool. Madison stood frozen, her own phone still recording her shocked expression for her Instagram followers. "No," Mother whispered. "No, that's impossible. You're a waitress. You're a failure. You can't even keep a steady job." "I haven't been a waitress in 5 years, Mother," I said calmly. "Not since Marcus Sterling left me his inheritance and I used it to buy this place." "Marcus Sterling," Christopher's voice cracked. "The Marcus Sterling, the hospitality billionaire. He was my mentor, I explained. He saw potential in me that my own family never did. He taught me this business, and when he passed, he left me the means to enter it myself. Senator Williams chose that moment to approach. Paige, wonderful morning, isn't it? I wanted to confirm our meeting about the campaign fundraiser next month. The celebrity chef joined him. Boss, the menu for tonight's event is ready for your approval. The federal judge added his voice. Ms. Harrison, thank you again for accommodating my daughter's wedding. This place is absolutely perfect. One by one, guests and staff began acknowledging me, making it impossible for my family to deny the truth. The maintenance supervisor handed me the morning report. The pool attendant asked about adjusting the schedule. My head of marketing appeared with social media analytics for my review. This can't be real, Sophie said weakly. You've been lying to us this entire time. I never lied, I replied. You never asked. You all assumed I was failing because that fit your narrative. Every family gathering you pitied me, offered me condescending advice, suggested dead-end jobs. Not once did any of you ask what I actually did here. Christopher's face was cycling through emotions like a slot machine. But you let us embarrass ourselves. You let us make fools of ourselves. You did that all on your own, I said. I was just doing my job, checking on my resort, ensuring my guests were satisfied. You were the ones who decided I was stalking you, harassing you, being inappropriate. Barbara suddenly found her voice again. This is cruel. You set us up. You wanted to humiliate us. Did I force you to demand I be removed from my own property? I asked. Did I make you threaten to sue my business? Did I tell you to call me a failure, a disappointment, an embarrassment to the family? The crowd of onlookers had grown considerably. Several were recording, and I knew this would be on social media within minutes. The hashtag #ResortOwnerReveal would probably be trending by lunch. Madison, still recording everything, tried to salvage the situation. Well, congratulations on your success. We're all very proud of you. Proud. I laughed, and it was not a kind sound. Where was that pride when you seated me at the children's table at Christmas? Where was it when you didn't invite me to your charity gala because I would embarrass you in front of your society friends? Where was it when you all skipped my birthday dinner last year because you had more important things to do? Thomas tried to speak. Paige, we had no idea. Exactly. I cut him off. You had no idea because you never bothered to know me. You created a version of me in your heads, the family failure, the cautionary tale, the one who couldn't get her life together. And you were so convinced of that story that you never noticed when it stopped being true. The pool area had become an amphitheater of shock and judgment with my family as the unwitting performers in a tragedy of their own making. Barbara's legs gave out, and she collapsed onto a lounge chair, her face a mask of disbelief and humiliation. The same chair that cost more than what she thought I made in a month. But how? She whispered, her teacher's voice reduced to a broken rasp. How could you afford this place? It must be worth millions. $25 million at current valuation, I said matter-of-factly. Marcus Sterling left me $10 million when he passed. I invested it wisely, bought this place when it was failing, and turned it around. We're now one of the most profitable boutique resorts in California. Christopher, still unable to accept this reality, pulled out his phone and started frantically searching. His face went through several more shades of pale as he found article after article about me. Forbes, Business Insider, Wall Street Journal. How did we not know about this? Because you never looked, I said simply. You were so sure you knew who I was that you never bothered to Google me. You never asked about my work. Every conversation we had was you telling me what I should do with my life, never asking what I was actually doing with it. Sophie, the lawyer, was trying to process the legal implications. So when we threatened to sue, when we demanded you be fired, we were actually demanding that I fire myself from my own company and sue myself for harassment. I completed. Your law degree is really paying off, Sophie. The crowd was growing, and I could hear whispers and see phones pointed in our direction. Someone had already posted on Twitter, and the responses were pouring in. My public relations manager, Sarah, appeared at my elbow with her tablet, showing me the social media explosion. The video has 50,000 views already, she whispered. Should I do damage control? Let it run, I told her. This is authentic content you can't buy." Madison had stopped recording her phone, hanging limply in her hand. "But you served us coffee yesterday morning. You were checking on our room." "I check on all my guests," I said. "It's called being a hands-on owner. I know every detail of this operation because I built it from nothing. Every staff member, every menu item, every thread count in your sheets I personally selected." Barbara suddenly stood up, her face flushing red again, but this time with rage rather than embarrassment. "You did this on purpose. You wanted to humiliate us. This is revenge for every perceived slight, isn't it?" "Perceived?" I asked. "Was it perceived when you told everyone at Sophie's engagement party that I was between opportunities when I actually owned this place? Was it perceived when Christopher told his medical school friends that his sister was a cautionary tale about wasting potential?" Christopher flinched. "You heard about that." "His wife posted the video on Facebook," I said, gesturing to Madison. "You laughing with your friends about how at least you had one successful sibling to make up for the family disappointment." Thomas tried to take control of the situation, his accountant's mind seeking order. "Let's all calm down and discuss this privately." "Privately?" I looked around at the gathered crowd. "Like when you privately told your golf buddies that you were worried I'd end up homeless, or when you privately suggested to Mother that maybe I had a learning disability that prevented me from succeeding." Each revelation landed like a physical blow. The crowd was entirely on my side now, shooting disapproving looks at my family. The federal judge actually shook his head in disgust. The senator's wife whispered something that made her husband chuckle. "Ms. Harrison," Mike stepped forward formally, "would you like me to escort these individuals off the property? It was perfect, my own security chief offering to remove my family from my resort. The irony was so thick you could spread it on toast." "That won't be necessary, Mike," I said. "They're paying guests. They have every right to be here." Barbara found her voice again, weaker now, but still defiant. "We're leaving. We're checking out immediately." "Of course," I said professionally. "James will process your checkout. Though I should mention you booked a non-refundable rate. The full payment of $12,000 for the 3-night stay will still be charged." $12,000, Thomas choked. "Christopher, you spent $12,000. Christopher looked sick. "It was supposed to be special for your anniversary." "Which you're welcome to continue celebrating," I added. "Your suite is yours until Sunday. The dinner reservation at our chef's table tonight is still confirmed. The spa treatments Madison booked are still scheduled." Sophie, ever the lawyer, tried one last angle. "We could claim emotional distress. This whole setup was designed to cause us pain." "What setup?" I asked innocently. "I was just doing my job. You're the ones who demanded to speak to the owner. You got what you asked for." The crowd was starting to disperse, but the damage was done. Videos were already viral. The hashtag #HadKarenMeetsOwnerDaughter was trending. My phone was buzzing with messages from other resort owners, journalists, and even a few celebrities who wanted to hear the whole story. Barbara stood up shakily, gathering what was left of her dignity. "We need to talk about this as a family." "We've been a family for 32 years, I said. "When did talking ever involve listening to me?" She flinched at that truth. "You're still our daughter." "I've always been your daughter," I replied. "But I've never been good enough for you. Not when I was a waitress, not when I was struggling, and apparently not even now when I own a $25 million resort." Christopher tried once more. "Paige, we're proud of you. This is amazing." "No," I said firmly. "You're embarrassed that the family failure is more successful than the family doctor. There's a difference between pride and wounded ego." Madison, who had been silent for a while, suddenly spoke up. "Your Instagram has 200,000 followers." It was such a random comment that everyone turned to look at her. "I just found it," she continued, holding up her phone. 200,000 followers, verified blue check, pictures with celebrities, politicians, business leaders. How did we not know? "Because you never looked," I repeated. "You had my personal Instagram where I post pictures of sunsets and my dog. You never thought to look for my professional presence because you couldn't imagine I had one worth finding." The truth of it settled over them like a heavy blanket. They had been so convinced of my failure that they had never bothered to verify it. They had created a fiction about me and then been shocked when reality didn't match. "I think we should go," Thomas said quietly, the first sensible thing he'd said all weekend. Your checkout is whenever you're ready, I said professionally. And despite everything I do, hope you enjoyed your stay at Ocean View Luxury Resort. As they walked away, I heard Barbara say to Thomas, "How did we not see this?" And Thomas replied with the truest thing he'd ever said about me, "We weren't looking." James appeared beside me as my family disappeared into the hotel. "That was quite a performance, Ms. Harrison." "That wasn't a performance," I said, watching the ocean sparkle in the morning sun. "That was just the truth finally having its day." My phone rang. It was a reporter from the San Francisco Chronicle. "Ms. Harrison, we'd love to do a story about the viral video of you revealing your ownership to your family." "Send the request to my PR team," I said professionally. "But the story isn't about the reveal. It's about what happens when you become successful, despite everyone expecting you to fail." As I stood there in my resort, my empire, my achievement, I thought about Marcus Sterling one more time. He had seen me when my own family couldn't. He had believed in me when blood relatives didn't. He had given me more than money. He had given me the chance to prove that their definition of me was wrong. And now, with the California sun warming my face and my successful business humming around me, I had done exactly that. The aftermath of the revelation was swift and comprehensive. Within 2 hours, the video had been viewed over 1 million times across various platforms. My PR team was fielding calls from major news outlets, and my personal phone was flooded with messages from industry colleagues and friends who couldn't believe what they had witnessed. My family had retreated to their suite, and according to my staff room service had been ordered but barely touched. The champagne Christopher had ordered to celebrate their anniversary sat unopened. The irony wasn't lost on me that they were now hiding in the suite they had tried to have me banned from. Around 2 p.m, Barbara appeared at my office door. James had escorted her up, and she stood there looking older than her 58 years, diminished somehow by the morning's revelations. "May I come in?" she asked, her voice uncertain. I gestured to the chair across from my desk, the desk that overlooked the entire property, the ocean stretching endlessly beyond. The office was elegant, but warm, with photos of the resort's transformation awards on the walls, and yes, a picture of Marcus Sterling in a place of honor. Barbara sat down carefully, as if the chair might collapse under the weight of her mistakes. She looked around the office, taking in the evidence of my success that she had never imagined existed. "I suppose you hate us," she said finally. "No," I replied honestly. "Hate takes too much energy. I'm disappointed, hurt, and frustrated, but not hateful." "We only wanted what was best for you," she said, the same excuse parents had been using since the beginning of time. "You wanted what looked best for you," I corrected. "A daughter who fit into your narrow definition of success. Doctor lawyer married with children, house in the suburbs. Anything outside that box was failure in your eyes." She fidgeted with her purse strap, a nervous habit I remembered from childhood. "When did you become this person, this successful businesswoman?" "I've always been her," I said. "You just couldn't see it through your expectations. Even Marcus Sterling, a stranger, saw my potential in a roadside diner. My own mother couldn't see it across a dinner table." Tears started flowing down her cheeks, but I didn't offer tissues. These weren't tears of genuine remorse. They were tears of embarrassment and damaged pride. "Your father is mortified," she said. "Christopher is in shock. Sophie keeps saying this is legally actionable but won't say how. Madison has deleted all her social media." "And what about you?" I asked. "What are you feeling?" She thought for a long moment. Confused, angry, proud, ashamed. I don't know how to reconcile the daughter I thought I had with the woman sitting across from me. "That's the problem," I said. "You never had the daughter you thought you had. You had the daughter you created in your mind. The real me was always here building this, achieving this, becoming this. You just weren't interested in meeting her." Barbara stood up abruptly. "We're leaving. Thomas has already called for a car. We won't stay where we're not wanted." "You're wanted," I said, surprising both of us. "You're my family. Despite everything, you're welcome here. But you're welcome as my family, not as people who get to judge and diminish me." She walked to the door, then turned back. "Will you ever forgive us?" "Maybe," I said honestly. "But forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. And it doesn't mean returning to the dynamics that brought us here. After she left, I sat in my office thinking about families, both the ones we're born into and the ones we create. My staff had become my chosen family. Marcus Sterling had been more of a parent to me than my biological ones. The regular guests who celebrated my success were more supportive than blood relatives. That evening, my family checked out early despite losing their full payment. Christopher left a note at the front desk, a short apology that felt more like an obligation than genuine remorse. Sophie sent a text saying she was proud of me, but the words felt hollow after years of exclusion. Madison had blocked me on all social media as if that was some kind of punishment. Thomas said nothing at all, his silence speaking volumes. 6 months later, the story had become hospitality industry legend. I was invited to speak at conferences about entrepreneurship, about overcoming family expectations, about building success from failure. The resort's bookings had actually increased with people wanting to stay where the famous reveal had happened. Barbara called occasionally stilted conversations, where she tried to act proud while clearly still processing her embarrassment. She had started telling people about her successful daughter, but I knew it was more about saving face than genuine pride. Christopher had reached out about a medical conference in San Francisco, transparently hoping for free accommodation. I politely declined and suggested several nice hotels. Sophie was the only one who made a real effort. She came to visit alone, and we spent a weekend actually talking. She admitted she had always been jealous of my freedom to fail, while she had been trapped in the expectation to succeed. It wasn't reconciliation, but it was a start. A year after the pool incident, I received an unexpected package. Inside was a framed photo from my college graduation, one I had never seen before. It showed me laughing with genuine joy, my cap tilted at a ridiculous angle, looking absolutely free. The note attached was in my father's handwriting. I found this while going through old photos. This is the daughter we should have celebrated. I'm sorry it took me so long to see her. Love, Dad. I hung the photo in my office next to the one of Marcus Sterling. 2 father figures, one who saw me and one who learned to see me too late. But at least he had learned. The resort continued to thrive. We won 5 stars from Forbes Travel Guide, were featured in Condé Nast's Gold List, and had a waiting list for reservations stretching 6 months out. I opened a second property in Napa Valley, then a third in Santa Barbara. The hospitality empire Marcus had dreamed of me building was becoming reality. But the greatest success wasn't in the properties or the profits. It was in the moment I stopped needing my family's approval to feel valuable. The moment I realized that their inability to see my worth didn't diminish it. The moment I understood that some people are committed to misunderstanding you, and that's their burden to carry, not yours. Standing on my private terrace on the 2nd anniversary of the reveal, I watched the sun set over the Pacific. My phone buzzed with a text from Barbara, a link to an article about my latest hotel opening with the words, "So proud of you." I deleted it without responding. Not out of anger, but out of indifference. Her pride, so absent when I needed it, meant nothing now that I didn't. Success, I had learned, was not about proving others wrong. It was about proving yourself right. And that proof was in every sunset viewed from my resort, every grateful employee, every satisfied guest, every dream that Marcus Sterling had helped me make real. The family that had demanded to speak to the owner had gotten their wish. They had met the owner, the CEO, the entrepreneur, the success story. They just hadn't recognized her because they had been too busy looking for the failure they had created in their minds. Their loss, my gain, my empire, my life. Have you ever been underestimated by your own family? Have you ever had to choose between their approval and your dreams? What would you do if the people who were supposed to support you the most became your biggest doubters? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more stories about triumph over family expectations. Share this with someone who needs to hear that family approval is not required for personal success. Thank you for joining me on this journey. Remember, the people who can't see your worth don't determine your value. Sometimes the best revenge truly is massive success, especially when it's built on the foundation of someone else's belief in you when your own family couldn't see your potential. Until next time, may you find the courage to build your own empire with or without your family's approval.